Apparently. If you, hopefully you still have last week's handout. There's some extra copies back there. This is a good introduction, but we're especially going to need the figures of the maps. Well, I don't know if we need them, but you'll find them helpful, I think. So if you don't have the maps, the nice thing about the maps is that it also describes the verses, the chapter and verse that it refers to. So in particular, probably we're going to look at figure 2 and, well, probably all of them actually today. All right. Well, while everybody else is getting their things, we can go ahead and begin. Let's start with prayer. May the words of my mouth, meditations of our hearts be pleasing in your sight, O Lord, our rock and redeemer. Amen. All right. What we're going to do first is just the first 4 chapters here of chapter 40. And again, remember last week, I kind of gave you an introduction to chapters 40 to 48. And I think there's a lot of potential to talk about symbolism, but most of that symbolism is going to be pretty opaque to us, I think. And before we read this, I would note this too. Not everything has to represent something. So there is a danger in reading the Bible the way that I like to, and I think we're actually commended to by our church fathers in particular, which is that like every time you bump into water, you might ask the question, does this have something to do with baptism, right? Or every time you bump into the angel of the Lord, you say, is this Jesus, right? Or every time that you bump into the wine press, you say, does this connect us to the supper somehow, right, with grapes or wheat and with harvest, harvest times. Or sacrifices, right, and does this connect us to the sacrifice of Christ? And we're given permission to do that. I'll say as much in the sermon again, by Jesus, because he says that the Scripture testifies of him. All Scripture testifies of him. But it's possible, actually, that there'll be times where there's water, or there's 40 days, or there's grape and wheat, there's wine and feasting or something, and it's just what it is. It's just something that happened, or it's just a number, right? I think that's possible too. And that's certainly going to be the case, I think, with Ezekiel, as he's describing things that he can't understand. This, I would suggest, is set in contrast with John's temple vision, which we talked about again last week, from Revelation 21 and 22, where John seems to have more figurative precision. I think that's the way to say it. He does seem to be much more interested in everything confessing something. All right. But that would make sense because John is seeing things in light of Christ, who's already come, who he actually knew, face to face. Whereas Ezekiel is seeing things that he does not even yet know. He can only really relate to the things he sees of heaven based off of the temple of old. Whereas John can talk about the things of heaven in light of the temple who is to come, who is Jesus. Does that make sense? All right. So that all being said, I don't know that we're going to have to go terribly slow. Actually, I think we can just read it and just take it for what it is and not have to spend a lot of time trying to figure out what does this represent, like we do maybe in a gospel. All right, so let's read the first 4 verses, the introduction, I would suggest, to chapters 40 through 42. So 3 chapters introduced with 4 verses.
In the 25th year of our exile, at the beginning of the year, on the 10th day of the month, in the 14th year after the city was struck down, on that very day, the hand of the Lord was upon me, and he brought me to the city. In visions of God, he brought me to the land of Israel, and set me down on a very high mountain, on which was a structure like a city to the south. When he brought me there, behold, there was a man whose appearance was like bronze, with a linen cord and a measuring reed in his hand, and he was standing in the gateway. And the man said to me, Son of man, look with your eyes, and hear with your ears, and set your heart upon all that I shall show you. For you were brought here in order that I might show it to you, declare all that you set to the house of Israel.
See, to the house of Israel. Yeah, this might be one of the times where it'd be nice to get the adjustable wall mount, and I can raise it up. We don't have slip floors, Matt.
She has math.
Exactly. I don't think it's saying anything in particular about the size of your head, just where you're sitting.
Yeah.
All right. So, to the date. This is how oracles work. We get a date. 25th year of our exile, at the beginning of the year, and the 10th day of the month, the 14th year after the city was struck down, on that very day. All right.
This will be better for me. I don't find that.
That's fine. I'm not really, that was enough. Anyway, 25th year of exile. So here again, there's the temptation to say, well, what does 25 represent? And what does the beginning of the year represent? And what does the 10th day of the month represent? And what about the 14th year after the city? Or you could simply say that this was April 28, 573. Okay, which you could do. I think it could be both. And, this is the thing. We're always trying to find something to comment on when you're a theologian. So 25th year, that's half of the year of Jubilee. So that might be. Year of Jubilee is a year of liberty, being set free, the captives being set free. That would happen every 50 years by God's mandate. And so we're halfway there. So we have exile, and then maybe half of the year of liberty, or of Jubilee. So they're going to be set free from exile. I like that idea. Do you like that idea? Makes sense. Beginning of the year, some people say, oh, the Jews must have celebrated New Year's Day or something, or New Year's. There's no evidence of that. So, not historically, not in the scripture either. So that's a unique phrase right here in Ezekiel, and actually in the rest of the Bible, talking about the beginning of the year. So they didn't celebrate a new year the way we do, the way that we do. All right, so that's interesting too. For us, the new year, a glad new year. When do we sing that? Da, 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 da. From east to west to coast to coast. That's the hymn. The last stanza talks about a glad new year. And it's referring to the season from Christmas to Epiphany. That those two seasons together are the beginning of the church year. So Christians have a different calendar, and we just always remember that. We don't have to obey the Roman secular calendar or the Roman days or counting of time or daylight savings. All right? Christians are not beholden to obey daylight savings. That would be kind of fun to do, just to ignore it one year and see what happens.
None of my clocks are changed.
None of your clocks are changed. Very good. All right. All right.
I just make any appointments at 8 a.m.
Just don't make appointments Saturday. All right, 10th day of the month. Well, if it were the 7th month, Nisan, which is the month of the Passover, the 10th day is the day that they sacrifice the Passover lamb. All right, and then, so that would have been Maundy Thursday, that evening at twilight. So, maybe, except it doesn't say it's the 7th month. So that doesn't really, maybe it means something. And then 14th year. Actually, 14th year since the city was struck down, works with the math of the rest of the chapter of the 25th year of the exile. So when was the temple struck down? 25 minus 14, 11 years, or roughly 10, 11 years into the exile, the temple was destroyed. And now this is 14 years. Well, temple and city. And now it's 14 years after that. All right? On that very day, the hand of the Lord was upon me, and he brought me to the city. I don't know if I wrote anything about that. Hand of the Lord. Yeah, well, not really. Being brought to a city. And then in the visions of God, he brought me. All right, so now the city and the land of Israel and the very high mountain with the structure of the city. So this is the regular city that he's bringing to, probably Babylon, and then the capital of Babylon. And now we're going to the heavenly city in a vision. All right? Land of Israel, we've talked a lot about that, is that they're longing to return to their land. But does he literally mean that physical location in Israel? We've talked quite a bit about that too, especially in light of all the preponderance of Zionism in our context. Not Zionism as in Jesus is coming to restore his Zion, but rather there's a parcel of land over in the Middle East that belongs to Israel. That kind of Zionism. No, that's not what it's talking about. It's talking about the heavenly land. And the very high mountain, that's an interesting reference too, right? Can you think of what's described as a very high mountain in the Bible? I gave you a few examples on the sheet if you want to cheat, but you don't need to cheat, probably. Yep, Mount Sinai. Very good. All right. Another one?
Abraham with Isaac.
That's not described as a very high mountain, but it is a mountain. Good connection. Yeah, Zion, prophetically in Isaiah, is spoken of as a very high mountain. Isaiah 4, good. And then the big one, which of course Ezekiel can only see from afar, is the Mount of Transfiguration. It's described as a very high mountain. Which is always a question mark. It's like, where is there a very high mountain in Israel, physically, geographically? There isn't. You have to go pretty far north to get to even something resembling a mountain at all. What's in Israel geographically is mostly big hills. You know, they're like kettles. We wouldn't call those mountains, would we? No.
This is the base word and same with high.
And then it's modified, doubly modified, both high and then very high. Yeah, multiplied. All right. But now in light of the Mount of Transfiguration, we can say, oh, what was happening at the Mountain of Transfiguration? You know, in a sense, the curtain was being pulled back. We're seeing the Lord for who he is in eternity, right? With his face shone with the glory of God, right? And actually the city with Moses and Elijah. So all the patriarchs are there. Only a little glimpse, right? Not the whole vision with the apostles and the patriarchs and the 144,000, the whole deal, right? But there are a number of times in the Bible where it does seem like the curtain's pulled back, right? We'll hear that at Christmas Eve maybe in your program too, from Luke chapter 2, right, with the angels. We'll hear that at the 10 o'clock service this year, where the heavens are opened and the angels appear. All right, so it's that. And then we have this structure like a city to the south. I know none of you are city dwellers, and Plymouth doesn't count. I mean, the population of Plymouth is what, 4 times Random Lake? Maybe 5 times? Is it 8? All right, so I'm doing the math. Yeah, it's 5 times the size of Random Lake. That's still not a city. But the scriptures do describe heaven as a city, just not, Chicago. Ruled by mob, literally, either people or mob. Historically, not so much. Or today, not as much. Lawless, terrible, gross, no greenery, or at least fake greenery here and there. Park District. All right, No, this is actually a delightful city, one that we would love to dwell in. I don't know if that's possible for us to even imagine. Not for me, anyway. I've lived in city. I don't want to live there again. What else do I have to say about that? That's probably enough. Now the man. When he brought me there, behold, there was a man whose appearance was like bronze. Do you remember when we heard about creatures that look like bronze? No, that was it was almost a year ago, so we might as well go back and look at it. There they are. And I looked, and a stormy wind came out of the north, and a great cloud, and with brightness around it, and fire flashing forth continually, and in the midst of the fire, as it were, gleaming metal. And from the midst of it came the likeness of 4 living creatures, and this was their appearance. They had a human likeness, but each had 4 faces, and each of them had 4 wings. Their legs were straight, and the soles of their feet were like the sole of a calf's foot. Yep. And they sparkled like, there it is, burnished bronze. Under the wings, can you imagine this? You're imagining this? Yeah, okay. Try to draw it someday. Under the wings, on the 4 sides, they had human hands, and the 4 had faces, and their wings thus. Their wings touched each other. Each of them went straight forward, turning as they went. Yeah, you'll have to read this on your own and try to figure it out. The key was, these are heavenly beings, right? These 4 living creatures. John picks this up, of course, in Revelation as well, and the almost unanimous confession of the Christian church is that the 4 living creatures are the 4 evangelists. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Yeah. Which is kind of hard to... John is writing before the 4 Gospels are canonized, universally accepted by the church, but at the same time, maybe he sees it in advance. Right? But now Ezekiel's seeing it way out in advance. But I think the important thing with 4, and this will come up a lot in the temple vision of Ezekiel that we're going to look at, is the number 4 represents the world, usually. We have this with cardinal directions, right? North, south, east, west. Yeah. And Ezekiel does seem to be mostly concerned with topography, the horizontal dimensions. Not so much with vertical, which is interesting. Maybe something can be made of that. All right, so anyway, this man has the appearance like bronze, so that's connecting us to that angelic vision from chapter 1. And he has a linen cord and a measuring reed in his hand. So they would mark on long reeds and use those for measuring. In John's gospel, when he picks this up with the angel, the angel has a measuring rod. So it's made of metal or wood. But here it's a reed.
The angel coming down to...
Yeah, that's in Revelation 22, I think. It's probably on here somewhere on my notes. Yeah, it's Revelation 22:16. It is on my notes. All right. And then he's standing in the gateway. All right, and the man, and of course we're going to ask this question, who is this man? Well, I'll scroll up for those in the back. Son of man, look with your eyes and hear with your ears and set your heart upon all that I show you. For you were brought here in order that I might show it to you. Declare all that you see to the house of Israel. All right, so this is basic understanding of what it means to be a prophet, and the prophet's job is to receive what the Lord gives and then to declare it to the people. No more, no less. Right? That means he's not just a spectator. He's not just getting a supernatural vision, which people ask for and want all the time. But the purpose, and this is the same with any of the apocalyptic visions, including John, is the reason why God would reveal these things to you is for your comfort and your hope. All right? And we talked about that last week, I think. So he tells you what you need to know for the sake of faith, that you remain in the faith, that you first you come to faith, remain in the faith, and that faith persists until he comes again. And that would be the same here. Declare it to the house of Israel. Set your heart upon it, right? That's why he's been brought here. And same thing John says repeatedly in the Revelation, so maybe we'll look at that. All right? And I don't think you can read Revelation without reading Ezekiel, which is why we've taken all this time. Because then some of you might want to go and actually look at Revelation, but now that you've read Ezekiel, you'll be like, now I understand what he was doing. Right? So here it's the same idea. The revelation of Jesus Christ, all right, now that's a little bit more precise, isn't it? Which God gave him to show his servants the things that must soon take place. He made it known by sending his angel to his servant John, who bore witness of the word of God and to the testimony of Jesus Christ, even to all that he saw. All right? And then here's that point that I just made as far as prophetic visions go. Blessed is the one who reads aloud the words of this prophecy, and blessed are those who hear and who keep what is written in it, for the time is near. Right? So the witness, the testimony, here is more precisely of Jesus Christ, but it is for the benefit of that you be blessed, and that you be kept in the faith until Christ comes again. That's the point. That make sense? Now, I think this is going to be a little bit more challenging with Ezekiel than it is with Revelation. Revelation is much more clearly trying to confess Christ, whereas Ezekiel, I don't know if he quite knows that yet. So, all right, now here's where we're going to get into the map. Are you ready? Like I said, this is almost going to be like trying to read a genealogy and not read it theologically, just read it like as if it's just so-and-so begat so-and-so, begat so-and-so, begat so-and-so. Or so-and-so begat so-and-so, and then he died. So begat so-and-so, and then he died. You're like, okay, this is really... But sometimes you can connect the numbers. Sometimes you can pay attention to particular people. So if anything catches your attention as we read through this, and you want to know more about it, we can do some speculation, try to see what we can think. Matt's going to get into this, I think, though. I'm glad the architect's here today. Because as we already said last week, I don't know if I said this before you came, you were here, yeah, that it's not possible actually to build, if the cubit is 18 inches, it's not possible to build this temple on the Temple Mount. There's not physically enough space. So it's not presenting a temple that could be built, an earthly temple. All right, so who wants to read? I don't know how far to go. We'll go until you can't read anymore.
I'll read it.
Good.
And behold, there was a wall all around the outside of the temple area, and the length of the measuring reed in the man's hand was 6 long cubits, each being a cubit and a hand breadth in length. So he measured the thickness of the wall, 1 reed, and the height, 1 reed. Then he went into the gateway facing east, going up its steps, and measured the threshold of the gate, 1 reed deep, and the side rooms 1 reed long and 1 reed broad, and the space between the side rooms 5 cubits, and the threshold of the gate by the vestibule of the gate at the inner end, 1 reed. Then he measured the vestibule of the gateway on the inside, 1 reed. Then he measured the vestibule of the gateway, 8 cubits, and its jambs, 2 cubits, and the vestibule of the gate was at the inner end. And there were 3 side rooms on the other side of the east gate.
I'll scroll up.
The 3 were of the same size, and the jambs on either side were of the same size. Then he measured the width of the opening of the gateway, 10 cubits, and the length of the gateway, 13 cubits. There was a barrier before the side rooms, 1 cubit on either side. And the side rooms were 6 cubits on either side. Then he measured the gate from the ceiling of the one side room to the ceiling of the other, a breadth of 25 cubits. The openings faced each other. He measured also the vestibule, 60 cubits. And around the vestibule of the gateway was a court. From the front of the gate at the entrance to the front of the inner vestibule of the gate was 50 cubits, and the gateway had windows all around, narrowing inwards toward the side rooms and toward their jambs. And likewise the vestibule had windows all around inside, and on the jambs were palm trees.
That's probably good for now. Yeah, now this is fun reading, right? Matt's got it all in his mind's eye. If you have last week, no, you're already imagining it, but figure 2 and 3 are the one you want to look at here to kind of get an idea of how this is looking. Because we're getting both the outer gates, that's verses 6 through 16. So we read about those. That's figure 3. And then you got the outer wall there. You get a picture of that on figure 2. And the outer gates you can see there as well, which is B. So figure 3 is just this little bit right down here at the bottom. Each of these little bits, these outer gates. Make sense? All right, so that figure 3 is just a breakdown of the little bits here on figure 2. Now this is a pretty large wall, and I guess, like I said, if a cubit is 18 inches, 1.5 feet, then they said the reed was what? 6 cubits. So do the math. 6 times 1.5 feet. 9. Yeah, it's roughly 9 or 10 feet. Yeah. Oh, and a handbreadth. A cubit and a handbreadth. So that's why I said 10. You have to round up a little bit. Yeah, so, here's Matt. He's the builder. We got the architect and the builder. So now you're talking about walls that are 10 feet high and 10 feet deep. It's a pretty significant construction, right? Because you're building out of stone. And then within those walls, you can see that there's rooms within the walls. And then, of course, these massive outer temple gates with all of their guard rooms. Literally, you have to run the gauntlet in figure 3. To get into the temple, you've got to go past 6 guard rooms, 3 on either side. All right, that is the gauntlet. And this is one of the important things you want to note here with these walls, I would suggest, is that one of the big themes in Ezekiel has been the separation of what is profane from what is sacred, right? Or God making his people holy. We had that with the visions of the 2 women, or the daughters, right? The sisters, they were sisters, Samaria and Jerusalem, and how God made them holy, purified them, washed them clean. Of course, they rebelled against that and made themselves unclean again, right? But here, finally, now in the temple, once you go into the temple, once you're brought in through those gates in the holiness of Christ, you are protected. And this is really the only indication of a vertical dimension, or in this part of the book, is these walls being 10 feet tall. How tall is that? That's pretty tall, right? And there's guards to get in through the gates, and of course guards on the wall. So you, once you're in the Lord's temple, you don't have to worry about being in danger and being in danger. Nothing's going to get in to harm you, right? Of course, we talk about this in the church, right? If you're with Christ, nothing can harm you either, right? And he is your temple. So, the dimensions and the spaces and all the little vestibules, I don't think they're immaterial, but it is interesting. Like, broadly, what are we trying to confess? And we can picture it like we did in the figure, because he's very precise in his measurements. Here again, especially like with John's apocalypse, numbers are huge, big deal. So you saw some of the numbers that come up frequently. We have 6. We have 25 was in there a few times. We have 8. We have, what was another number we got? 5, right? And of course 1. All right. Now what do those numbers represent here? That's up to you. I mean, 6 is usually incomplete. So it's like John uses that to indicate, the satanic, that things are never complete. Something that's satanic is something that's not finished, right? Not finished in Christ ultimately. 8 is the new life usually. The day of resurrection is the 8th day. So there's that. 25 we already talked about as half of the year of Jubilee. Oh, there's 13 in there. I don't know what that's about. I don't want to miss 13.
Sometimes there's a relationship between the numbers and the proportions, and
Yeah.
there's a golden ratio a lot of
Oh, yeah. You could probably try to figure out if there's some ratio things. There's a whole tradition that came out of Judaism, medieval Judaism, that some Christians have picked up on, where they connect numbers and letters as well, but it's numbers, relationship of numbers. So they think that there are things like sacred geometries.
Mm-hmm.
You've heard about these sorts of things. The Greeks had that too, but there's Jews and Christians too that pick up on that. I've arranged my loudspeakers, in a room based off the golden ratio. There's a whole internet thing. A guy named George Cardis wrote up a paper about it, and everybody thought it was going to be the next hot thing.
That always sounds the best, looks the best.
Well, no, so it has the best modal response.
Okay.
It's an acoustic property. It doesn't matter. But there are repeating patterns of numbers in creation. The big one would be like Fibonacci sequence. We've talked about that probably with John, actually, when we talk about John. Anybody remember me talking about Fibonacci sequence? Nobody does. So you don't even know what this is. Oh, no. This is a really big tangent, so I don't want to go there.
Sounds complicated.
It's not. 1 plus 1 is 2. 2 plus 1 is 3. 3 plus 2 is 5. So it's the sequence. You keep adding the previous number to the next number. And then if you picture it in terms of geometry, it ends up creating
Perfect spiral.
a perfect spiral, which you see all over in nature. The conch shell, the fern leaf, and then this is what the Greeks, they observed that, and then they applied it geometrically to the building of theirs.
Your face to your eyes.
Yeah, face and eyes. Oh, well, Da Vinci has it, and what's his man? Universal man. No, Da Vinci talks about it too. It's observable. So, it does seem that there are some things that are universal constants, right, in the world. But in any case, I don't know if you can get that from here. There's probably somebody who's written papers on these things. I didn't bother to go look.
Didn't you send a picture of a model of this week?
Last week.
No.
Oh, a model, yes. If you look at the YouTube video.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was pretty helpful.
Was it a 3D model? Okay.
Nice job.
All right, somebody did a nice job. All right, we'll look for it. Let's see if we can find it again. Ezekiel, I think it was just 40 is what I searched for. Oh, yeah, look at all those.
There you go.
No.
Even had the river in it.
Yeah, this will open eventually, maybe. There you go. Yeah, so there's a 3D. But he doesn't seem to be all that concerned about the 3D. He only really describes the outer wall, although it does seem, this diagram seems to have that. Perfect square, there's the river of life, which is interesting. The river of life seems to disrupt the whole architecture of the thing, which as rivers do, right? They don't really care about your boundaries, right?
It's a common theme too, the juxtaposition with the order.
Yeah, order and chaos. Yeah, God, I heard somebody say this, and I'm still thinking about whether or not it's true, is that God at creation imposed order on chaos, but that the chaos wasn't gone. It was the order was imposed over it. So he brought the chaos into order, but there's always the potential of chaos underneath. Hence the flood, right? It breaks out, the chaos breaks out again. Or the last day when the earth is destroyed. It's when God withholds his hand, his ordering hand, then the chaos breaks out again and the whole earth goes to hell at the end. It was an interesting idea. Anyway, yeah. So here's your outer wall, and then here's all here's the gate going in. 10 feet, but they didn't picture it with 10 feet deep and 10 feet high, which would be a pretty imposing structure. But, yeah. Okay, well, I'm glad you found that helpful. I just have to pick a picture, and there's not a lot of pictures of Ezekiel 40. So there you were. All right, where were we? One note to here. This palm trees at the end, I'll scroll up so you can see that. You're going to see some references like this. Ezekiel, remember, he's speaking from what he knows, and what he knows is the tabernacle and the temple, the Solomonic temple. All right? Which, if you remember, Solomon's temple was very precisely described, and it could be built, because it was, right, by Solomon. But what was carved into the wood panels on the sides? Palm trees. Palm trees, yeah. Yeah, and other things, right? Pomegranates. That was also in the priestly garments in the tabernacle, right? So you have that. We're going to get to garments here in a bit, maybe. All right, so we have the palm trees. So that's, again, to Matt's point, where you had the river in the midst of this order, even in both tabernacle, temple, and now with this heavenly temple, you also have creation reflected in order. So I did a whole paper on this church that was built in northern Germany by a faithful Lutheran. He was the bishop. I talked about it on the podcast on Friday, but he, the Banned Books podcast, but he had some extra money left over from a church building project. Can you imagine? They were building the cathedral and they had money left over. Yeah, they went under budget, so then they built another church in another part of town. And he built it according to the geometry of Solomon's temple. But one of the things that he also notes in there in his own discussion of it is that he describes it as an ordered church grove. It's a grove. So the columns, it's Gothic. The columns on the side were tree trunks, and then the canopies all have leaves. So you're in a garden, but it's not random trees, but they're trees perfectly ordered. There were 12 of them, of course, because why wouldn't there be 12, right? So the idea of Eden being this perfectly ordered garden. So it's a garden, and it's alive, and yet it's also not chaotically breaking out wherever it wants, but actually according to some kind of design. Sometimes it's hard to see the design of creation, right? You're like, why are those things growing there? And why don't these things grow where we want them to? Yeah. All right. Anyway, palm trees. So something alive in the midst. Any other notes on that part? Nope. All right. Let's read the next little chunk. This will be shorter. Just do the 3 verses there. Let's see if there's anything.
Then he brought me into the outer court. And behold, there were chambers and a pavement all around the court. 30 chambers faced the pavement, and the pavement ran along the side of the gates, corresponding to the length of the gates. This was the lower pavement. Then he measured the distance from the inner front of the lower gate to the outer front of the inner gate, 100 cubits on the east side and on the north side.
100 cubits, right? So that's just for the for the inner court. So again, you saw that in the picture. Here's your pavement, right? The lower pavement, and 100 cubits. I don't know how to do that. From where to where? I don't remember what it said.
Probably the inside face that outer gate court, maybe to
Here, like that dimension.
or between the two.
Oh, in between.
Yeah,
Here to
there
here.
you go, yeah,
This dimension.
that's what I was mentioning.
Yeah, I think you're right. This is fun. All right. All right. Let's just keep going. Unless you had something there.
As for the gate that faced toward the north, belonging to the outer court, he measured its length and its breadth. Its side rooms, 3 on either side, and its jambs and its vestibule were of the same size as those of the first gate. Its length was 50 cubits, and its breadth 25 cubits. And its windows, its vestibule, and its palm trees were of the same size as those of the gate that faced toward the east. And by 7 steps people would go up to it, and find its vestibule before them. And opposite the gate on the north, as on the east, was a gate to the inner court, and he measured from gate to gate 100 cubits.
Yeah, there you're right. I think you're right, Matt. There's the 100 cubits again, gate to gate. So where's your steps, your 7 steps? Right here. Yeah, the 7 steps. So the outer gate and the inner gates mirror each other, right? There's an outer court and an inner court. Of course, we remember that from the tabernacle, right? There was the holy place, and then there was the courtyard, which was only for the men, and then the women and children and Gentiles would be outside that inner gate. Then when you get to the temple, then you have an outer court and an inner court. Because with the bless you, with the tabernacle, you only had the courtyard. You didn't have an inner and outer. But with the temple, you did. But not at this dimension, right? And not with this. Well, and why so much larger than Solomon's? Well, it's heaven, right? So the whole host of heaven is going to be contained within these walls, quote unquote. I mean, I'm not saying it couldn't be literal, that he's describing what actually is, or that it's still figurative in some sense. This is really hard to get our heads around, isn't it?
There's a lot to it, and we got different layers, you could imagine like
Right.
an outer layer or a few different levels.
Ooh, I like thinking of it three-dimensionally too. Maybe it's upon levels too. Who knows? Right? There are some certain problems that we're going to come up to when it regards to Jesus, because, of course, it has a temple curtain, but the temple curtain was torn in two, and the temple was exposed. So again, ultimately now, John recognizes that this is Christ. This is really hard to get your head around. How can a building represent Jesus? But he's ordered, all the nations are included in him. There they are fed and cared for. There they receive life. There his sacrifice is given to them, forgiveness of sins, etc. All right, so something. Oh, I went to the wrong thing, sorry. Back to this. There we go. Good so far? Like I said, we should just keep reading, I think. More palm trees, more 25s.
And he led me toward the south, and behold, there was a gate on the south, and he measured its jambs and its vestibule. They had the same size as the others. Both it and its vestibule had windows all around, like the windows of the others. Its length was 50 cubits, and its breadth 25 cubits. And there were 7 steps leading up to it.
Just like before.
Its vestibule was before them, and it had palm trees on its jambs, one on either side. And there was a gate on the south of the inner court. And he measured from gate to gate toward the south 100 cubits.
Palm branches. We're going to hear about those today in church. As we do on Palm Sunday, we hear on the first Sunday in Advent. All right, they strew the palm branches before him. So the way that Jesus enters into the city is through the palms. Curious? Maybe. Yeah, I mean, there's other things that are going on with the palm branches, but there's that. Oh, so in other words, same as before. So you just read 4 verses that said the same thing as the previous 4. And guess what's going to happen again? Then he brought me to the inner court through the south gate, and he measured the south gate. It was the same size as the others. The side rooms, its jambs, its vestibule, same size as the others, both it and the vestibule had windows all around. Its length at 50 cubits, and its breadth 25 cubits. Same. And there were vestibules all around, 25 cubits long and 5 cubits broad. Its vestibule faced the outer court, palm trees on its jambs. Its stairway had, 8 steps. Oh, did they picture that? I don't know. No. How are you going to picture it on there? Yeah. All right, so 8 instead of 7. Is that a preferred entrance then? Hey, they plowed our road. Excellent. Everybody else will thank you for that. All right, then they brought me to the inner court on the east side, and he measured the gate. It was the same size as the others. Its side rooms, its jambs, its vestibule, the same size as the others. And both it and its vestibule had windows all around. Yeah, that's right. Boring. You can yawn. Its length was 50 cubits, and its breadth 25 cubits. So there's 50 and 25 put together. Right, that's helpful. To the point about the dating. The vestibule faced the outer court, and it had palm trees on its jambs on either side, and its stairway had 8 steps. Then he brought me to the north gate, and I measured it. Getting the idea yet? And it had the same size as the others. Its side rooms, its jambs, and its vestibule were the same size as the others, and had windows all around. We need to read this in church sometime. Pastor's reading the Ezekiel throne vision again. Its length was 50 cubits, and its breadth 25 cubits. I think we respond that way even to something that's so poignant as the creation story. We're like, we're going to go through all 7 days again. Pastor. Right. This is even worse. Its vestibule faced the outer court and had palm trees on its jambs on either side. Its stairway had 8 steps. All right. Oh, finally, something new. Finally, the chamber. Who wants to read?
There was a chamber with its door in the vestibule of the gate, where the burnt offering was to be washed. In the vestibule of the gate were 2 tables on either side, on which the burnt offering and the sin offering and the guilt offering were to be slaughtered. And off to the side, on the outside as one goes up the entrance of the north gate, were 2 tables. And off to the other side of the vestibule of the gate were 2 tables. 4 tables were on either side of the gate, 8 tables on which to slaughter. And there were 4 tables of hewn stone for the burnt offering, 1.5 cubits long, 1.5 cubits broad, and 1 cubit high, on which the instruments were to be laid with which the burnt offerings and the sacrifices were slaughtered. And hooks, a handbreadth long, were fastened all around with them, and on the tables the flesh of the offering was removed.
All right, so if you've got the chart, temple compound, figure 2, that was just which part? The washing tables, right? I think it's G. Yeah, the inner gates, I and G are where the washing tables, they're not even pictured on here, but there would be 4 on either side. Notice that that you have to wash the animal clean before you take it into the inner court. Right? So it has to be made holy before and slaughtered before it can go in to the altar. But even for it to go into the altar, it has to go through another set of gates with its 6 guard rooms on, 3 on either side. So even the sacrifice has had to go through multiple sets of gates and guard rooms and be made prepared for the slaughter before it could be slaughtered. And that, not just the animals though, right? But also whether it's for animals, but whether it's for burnt offering, sin offering, or guilt offering. And there, Ezekiel's talking about what he knows from Leviticus, from his training to be a priest, although he never exercised that from what we know. We have hooks to hang up the sacrifices on so they're ready to go in, I guess, right? And there the flesh was prepared. So this figures into Jesus, right? Where was he sacrificed for sin? Within the city? In the temple? No. Where was he sacrificed? Prepared. On Golgotha, outside the city walls, right? There is a green hill far away. You know the hymn. It says something about outside the city walls, doesn't it? Yeah, okay. I'm quoting a hymn. All right. Anything else on that? 4 and 8. They probably could make some hay out of the numbers there if you want. And 2 and 4 and all of that. But I'm not going to. All right, for the sake of interest. Now, outside the inner gate, there were 2 chambers in the inner court. See if we can. Go ahead and read, if you would. This is I on your figure 2. Oh, before you read it, never mind. The tables for the burnt offering, they are made of hewn stone. Okay, now pay attention to that because we're going to see a change here in the next few verses and the next reading. All right, I'll read, fine. On the outside of the inner gateway, there were 2 chambers in the inner court, one on either side of the north gate facing south, and one on the other side of the south gate facing north, opposite each other. And he said to me, or this way, this chamber that faces the south is for the priests who have charge of the temple, and the chamber that faces north is for the priests who have charge of the altar. All right. These are the sons of Zadok, who alone among the sons of Levi may come near to the Lord to minister to him. And he measured the court 100 cubits long, 100 cubits broad, a square, and the altar was in front of the temple. So now we're to the altar. Who are the sons of Zadok? Okay. He was, under Jehoiada, the king put Zadok as priest of the altar under Jehoiada, who was one of the priests kings that restored the temple worship. So there you are. All right, so actually I misspoke before. The sacrifice doesn't have to go through the gates because you have these rooms that are on the wall that allow the priest to take the sacrifice from the preparation stone tables into the inner court. The people would have to go through the gates. Make sense? Yeah. All right. Now, to the altar. Of course, this should be a central figure, and we maybe can spend a little time on this. Then he brought me to the vestibule of the temple and measured the jambs of the vestibule, 5 cubits on either side, and the breadth of the gate was 14 cubits, and the side walls of the gate were 3 cubits on either side. The length of the vestibule was 20 cubits, and the breadth 12 cubits, and the people would go up to it by 10 steps, and there were pillars beside the jambs on either side. On your chart, that's K. So there you have the vestibule, or as we call it, what do we call this out here? The narthex? Yeah, or vestibule would be a nice word from here. All right, so that's K. So now you're going to go from the altar into the most holy place with 10 steps. And you saw that on the picture. I think we can use, some of you like 3 dimensions here. This is the vestibule right here. So you go up 10 steps into the inner part of the temple.
It's interesting that the holiest of holy is not in the center of the whole thing, right?
The altar is.
The altar is right.
Yeah, the altar is. The altar of sacrifice, of the
So
burnt
that's
offering.
on one axis, but on the other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you don't even come in this way. You only come in. So only from the south, east, north, but not from the west. And of course, if you remember, the eastern gateway had a few extra features, if I remember correctly. It had 8 steps instead of 7. Where does Christ come from? Same place the sun comes from the east, yeah. So says the Western Church. Sorry if you live in the eastern half of the church, then Christ comes from the, by the way, historically, most of our churches don't follow tradition, is that the entrance to the church would face east, towards the rising of the sun. I was trying to think of one church that didn't do this. Oh yes, it was in Fort Wayne, and they had the altar on the east, facing the east, which was not fun through part of the calendar year, because then the windows behind the altar would be so lit up that you would there's just glare the whole time. You're just staring at the sun through stained glass, and it was really fatiguing. Whereas if the entrance is on the east and the sun rises, the window's going to illuminate the altar through the glass in the windows. Yeah, right. So that's something maybe to think about geographically. I'm not suggesting we pick up the church and reorient it. We don't really have windows on the east or on this end of the church anyway. You think of what would be the common feature in cathedrals. The window in the balcony behind you is a rose window. If you've been to European churches, you've seen that, the large rose window. Well, think about how much light would come in through that. And the color, too, then that would illuminate the room. It'd be really beautiful with sunrise. All right. Okay. So, so that's an important note, I guess.
When it faces north like ours, that should get even light.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I know. This is why I said we don't really go so much for symbols. We go more for practicality, right? We were talking about that with regards to trees. It's not really practical to cut down a tree. I mean, it took 10 years to grow the tree, and now it's dead, right? For what? For us to celebrate Christmas this year. Yeah, exactly. So it's not exactly practical, but it does mean something. It does mean something. All right. Yeah, I like how you think, Matt. Very practical. Morning and evening, we've got light. All right. Of course, it's not really true. The farther north you go, position of the sun on the horizon, it's not perfect, right? Yeah. Right? Isn't it now, during this year, it's mostly to the south, the sun? It's lower on the horizon. Yeah.
Comes up on the horizon farther to the south and just stays lower in the sky.
Okay. Yeah. Do you think about these things when you're designing a room? Okay. All right. Well, someday when you get to build a church, you can do this. Actually, I was going to write about this, and I never got around to it. There was an architect who was given the opportunity to build a new sanctuary for his congregation that I knew. This was out in Kansas. What happened is the old church was downtown, and CVS Pharmacy wanted the property and offered them many millions of dollars for their church, and they were struggling financially, and they consolidated with a little bit better off church in the suburb or out of town, and they consolidated the two churches. They built a new sanctuary. The two congregations together now as one, out where all the people were building new houses, as you do, right? You go where the people are going. People weren't building houses or living in the city. They were building CVSs instead. So I can't remember the numbers. I mean, this was 20 years ago now, but it was probably $4 million is I think what they got from the sale, something like that. Now, to build a new church for $4 million is really hard. But he was a builder and an architect, so he did a lot of things at cost. They still went over budget, etc. So I think they spent all that money plus some, which caused all sorts of tension in the newly formed congregation, to which the architect then had to leave the congregation after building them their new church because he was so offended at the way people were treating him. But anyway, neither here nor there. Don't build a church. Don't be the one responsible for building a new don't be the builder. Don't be the contractor either if you're a member of the church. Probably not a good idea.
I already did.
He did.
You've done that. Okay. You can.
John's important.
So you can.
Well, though, it was fine.
Okay.
And we left.
And then you left.
Not because of that. It was not because of that. It was just, the school got very small, that's all.
Yeah. So in any case, he.
Nothing I did.
So this architect, he had the opportunity to think very theologically about everything. So the number of spires, he built the altar platform into the bedrock and put the altar on the bedrock and then built the church around the altar, just like what we saw. Yeah, which mechanically wasn't always easy, right? But that was the theological confession, is like the altar is the center of the church and everything was built around that. Some things didn't get complete but have been completed since then. And then acquaintance of mine is the pastor now and buys my coffee. So there you go. No, but anyway, someday maybe when we do a little architecture thing, I can show you that church. It's pretty incredible what they were able to do. And there's some newer building techniques, like especially doing canopy ceiling, where they use the metal rods across. Have you seen this? To hold this to the side walls.
A tie rod.
Yeah, tie rods across, which aren't as obtrusive as like the whatever you call the. You know the words. I don't know the words. The things to hold up the ceiling.
Beams?
Yes, beams, but truss it. Yeah. So, right, and if you're doing like actual flying buttresses, then the trusses extend outward for cantilever, I guess, force. I don't know the physics. You guys know how to do this. All right, so then inner vestibule. Good. 41. How are we doing? We have a few more minutes. All right. I want to get to the altar.
Then he brought me to the nave and measured the jambs. On each side, 6 cubits was the breadth of the jambs, and the breadth of the entrance was 20 cubits, and the side walls of the entrance were 5 cubits on either side. And he measured the length of the nave, 40 cubits, and its breadth, 20 cubits. Then he went into the inner room and measured the jambs of the entrance, 2 cubits, and the entrance 6 cubits, and the side walls on either side of the entrance 7 cubits. And he measured the length of the room, 20 cubits, and its breadth, 20 cubits, across the nave. And he said to me, "This is the most holy place." Then he measured the wall of the temple, 6 cubits thick, and the breadth of the side chambers 4 cubits, all around the temple. And the side chambers were in 3 stories, one over another, 30 in each story. There were offsets all around the wall of the temple to serve as supports for the side chambers, so that they should not be supported by the wall of the temple. And it became broader as it wound upward to the side chambers, because the temple was enclosed upward all around the temple. Thus the temple had a broad area upward, and so one went up from the lowest story to the top story to the middle story. I saw also that the temple had a raised platform all around. The foundations of the side chambers measured a full reed.
Sorry if I went too far. Oh, there you go. Yep.
Of 6 long cubits. The thickness of the outer wall of the side chambers was 5 cubits. The free space between the side chambers of the temple and the other chambers was a breadth of 20 cubits all around the temple on every side. And the doors of the side chambers opened on the free space. One door toward the north and another door toward the south, and the breadth of the free space was 5 cubits all around.
Well, we might as well just keep going, right?
The building that was facing the separate yard on the west side was 70 cubits broad, and the wall of the building was 5 cubits thick all around, and its length 90 cubits. Then he measured the temple 100 cubits long, and the yard in the building with its walls 100 cubits long. Also the breadth of the east front of the temple and the yard 100 cubits. Then he measured the length of the building facing the yard that was at the back, and its galleries on either side 100 cubits. The inside of the nave and the vestibules of the court, the thresholds and the narrow windows, and the galleries all around the three of them, opposite the threshold, were paneled with wood all around from the floor to the windows. Now the windows were covered.
Ooh, don't look in there.
To the space above the door, even to the inner room, and on the outside, and on all the walls all around, inside and outside, was the measured pattern. It was carved of cherubim and palm trees, a palm tree between cherub and cherub. Every cherub had two faces, a human face toward the palm tree on the one side, and the face of a young lion toward the palm tree on the other side.
Mm.
They were carved on the whole temple all around, from the floor to above the door. Cherubim and palm trees were carved. Similarly, the wall of the nave.
Okay. Wow, there's a lot of things to talk about there. But just briefly, we did get one more vertical mention. We had the 3 stories within the temple. I don't know if I can find a picture of that, but maybe quickly. What was the other note that was interesting there? Well, we have the palm trees again, but this time we have palm trees on the walls all around. And then in between each palm tree is the cherub. Oh, there's one picture of it. I don't know which picture to use. Yeah, I see the palm trees. I wanted a better interior. That's not a very nice interior.
On the top there?
Which one? That's the outside again. I was looking to get inside this, you know. But that's not a great picture. I don't know. None of these pictures are good. This is the problem doing it on the fly. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the closest thing is the one with the palm trees, right? This one. We have the palm trees and the angels. Where was that? Oh, yeah, it's way behind you. Come on, you can catch up. That one. There you go. Carved into the walls. That's computer generated. And you've got different stories and whatnot. I don't know how great that picture is. That seems to be a little bit, well, it's trying to give you dimensions and whatnot, so it's doing its best. All right, but if you want a vertical top-down blueprint, that would be our figure 5 from the handout from last week. And we did not get to the temple. One thing I wanted to talk about, though, just quickly, is confession of Christ. How about the cherub, the angels? 2 faces, young lion and the human face. Jesus, 2-faced, is he 2-faced? No. But 2 natures, Son of God, Son of man. Yeah, maybe. The Lion of Judah, right? Son of God. And then, or Son of Man, you could go either way with that. And then, of course, the human face. All right. Again, it's alive. There's living creatures being carved into it. And there's windows, although the windows are covered, so what good are those? Yeah, and then galleries, so you can see what's happening in there. It does sound like this the temple itself, is made for spectators, for people to actually see what's going on. But that would be rare for the holy place, the most holy place, because in both temple and tabernacle before it, that would be only the high priest. And once a year, they would go in there. God would dwell in there, but they would only see, the priest would only go in there in the dark and offer the blood of the Lamb of Atonement once a year. That's it. And now it seems like, well, why would you have galleries and windows if they weren't to be thrown open to the people to see? All right? So that's a difference, right, between the temple and this new temple. All right, that's as far as we got. Somebody take note that we were on verse 21 of chapter 41. I wanted to get farther, but that, yeah, it just takes a while to read. So, okay, time for church. Don't you feel like you're reading Leviticus?